They begged for privacy, screamed for space, demanded the world stop watching, and then turned their entire lives into a glossy Netflix spectacle. That's the contradiction no one wants to say out loud. They lecture about truth, authenticity, boundaries, yet freeze the moment the simplest question comes up. And here's the part that makes people uneasy. The one thing they absolutely refuse to talk about: their own children. Because let's be real, most parents can't stop talking about their kids. Photos, stories, milestones, proud smiles. But when it actually matters, when clarity is needed, when tradition, transparency, and trust are on the line, total silence. Carefully staged images, perfect lighting, curated moments, a billion-dollar brand built on emotional storytelling, and suddenly the foundation starts cracking. And what's underneath? Something far messier than anyone expected. Something that could become the biggest royal controversy in decades.
Tell me that this wasn't on purpose. She knew exactly what she was doing here. Now, the question from Prince Harry and Meghan Markle at all about the lies that destroyed the final days of the...
And it's very interesting to work that out. There's two things, I think. One is that she was determined to...
The wedding anniversary arrives, the kind of date that used to be their Super Bowl. This is normally where the machine kicks in. Soft focus photos, a carefully worded caption about love, resilience, and our journey. Maybe a surprise release through friendly outlets. That's been the pattern for years. Every breath documented, every milestone monetized. They turned moments into currency. But this time, nothing. Not a post, not a statement, not even a half-hearted nod from their usual supporters. No glowing headlines, no Hollywood backpatting, no royal acknowledgement, silence so loud it echoed. And that's when people noticed something had shifted, because couples who live for attention don't suddenly forget their own anniversary. This wasn't privacy, this wasn't restraint, this was absence.
They are scrupulous about this. They have people on the set to say, for God's sake, don't make any hygiene.
Days passed, still nothing. No trending hashtags, no late-breaking exclusives. Entertainment shows didn't even bother pretending it mattered. The same couple who once hijacked news cycles with a single interview were suddenly ignored completely. And here's the brutal truth. Irrelevance hurts more than criticism ever could. This wasn't them stepping back. This was the world stepping away. For people whose identity revolves around being seen, being validated, being discussed, indifference is a nightmare. You can imagine the refreshing, the waiting, the hope that anyone would acknowledge the day. But the internet moved on, and when the noise dies, it leaves space for something else to grow.
Curates their visibility like any influencer parent managing content assets. Because
while the anniversary faded into nothingness, another conversation was heating up. One they didn't want. One that had been simmering for years, finally boiling over. Royal insiders, long-time watchers, people who knew how this institution works started speaking, not whispering anymore. And what they were questioning wasn't petty. It wasn't gossip for gossip's sake. It went straight to the heart of monarchy itself. Royal births follow a ritual. Always have. Hospital, documentation, medical staff, a public moment. It's not about spectacle, it's about trust. Kate did it 3 times. Exhausted, vulnerable, human, no mystery, no confusion. But with Meghan, none of that. No hospital steps, no clear timeline, no visible medical confirmations. Instead, oddly angled photos, controlled releases, and a baby bump that seemed to change. Day to day, event to event. People noticed, and when people notice patterns that don't make sense, questions follow.
About Archie and Lilibet's birth records have sparked panic inside Buckingham Palace.
Forums lit up, screenshots were compared, timelines analyzed. This wasn't trolling, this was scrutiny. Because when children are technically connected to succession, transparency isn't optional. It's the deal. And the more they avoided it, the louder the whispers became. For years, major outlets avoided touching it. Too risky, too controversial, easier to ignore. But the questions didn't disappear. They multiplied. And what made it worse was the irony. Harry and Meghan built their brand on telling their truth. Interviews, podcasts, documentaries. Yet the one story people genuinely wanted clarity on, total shutdown. No explanations, no calm reassurance, just curated images and vague statements that said everything and nothing at the same time. And when people pressed, that's when Harry erupted. He didn't deflect. He didn't calmly set boundaries. He exploded. Angry reactions, defensive statements, zero patience. And that reaction told people everything. Because confidence doesn't rage. Protection doesn't panic. When someone reacts that strongly wrongly to basic questions, it doesn't read as love, it reads as fear. And while he spiraled publicly, Meghan vanished. No backup, no unity, no calm counterbalance, just silence as he took the heat alone. That's not partnership, that's distance. And it made him look frantic, cornered, like someone fighting a narrative he could no longer control. Every outburst poured gasoline on the fire. Every denial made the doubts louder. And then there was the name, Lilibet, borrowed directly from the Queen herself. A name loaded with history, intimacy, legacy. And reports suggested permission may never have been clearly granted, which turned a supposed tribute into something far more uncomfortable. At this point, the issue wasn't just birth or protocols anymore, it was trust. When people stop trusting you, they fill in the blanks themselves, and rarely in your favor. The avoidance became a pattern. The silence became strategy. And the questions changed from what happened to why won't they explain? Because monarchy runs on one thing above all else: belief, bloodline, continuity. If doubt enters that system, everything shakes. And now the cracks were visible. And this was only the beginning. By this point, the questions weren't just lingering, they were multiplying. Because when you refuse to answer something simple, people don't assume innocence. They assume strategy. And the strategy here was obvious: delay, deflect, exhaust the audience, hope the noise fades. But something went wrong. The noise didn't fade, it sharpened. What made it worse was how avoidable all of this had been. Nobody was asking for private medical records or intimate details. They were asking for what every other royal had always done without drama: a clear process, a visible moment, a sense that nothing unusual was being hidden behind carefully curated frames. But instead of reassurance, the public got resistance. And resistance always creates suspicion. This is where the larger picture snapped into focus, because this wasn't just about Archie or Lilibet anymore. It wasn't even about Meghan specifically. It became about how monarchy works, or doesn't, in the modern age. Royalty isn't built on vibes or branding. It's built on lineage, on continuity, on the public believing the story they're being told makes sense. Once that belief weakens, the entire structure wobbles. And Meghan was supposed to be the modernizer, the fresh air, the woman who would update tradition without breaking it. That was the promise. That was the narrative sold to the public. Instead, millions are now questioning the most basic, unspoken rule of the institution: trust in the bloodline. That's not progress. That's destabilization. Harry's role in this made everything more tragic, because he wasn't just a participant, he became the shield. The one absorbing the backlash, the one lashing out, the one melting down. And the more emotional he got, the less convincing he appeared. A confident father doesn't spiral. A secure man doesn't explode over reasonable questions. What people saw wasn't strength, it was panic. Every angry reaction chipped away at his credibility. Every defensive move made it harder for anyone to believe there wasn't something deeper being avoided. And the silence from Meghan during these moments spoke volumes. She stayed carefully distant, silent, protected, while he looked increasingly unsteady. That imbalance didn't read as unity, it read as calculation. Then came the business fallout, and this is where the consequences became impossible to ignore. The media empire they tried to build started collapsing quietly. Netflix wrote the checks and got recycled grievance content. Spotify paid millions and publicly walked away. When executives start criticizing you out loud, that's not a setback, that's a warning label. Hollywood noticed, invitations slowed, endorsements cooled. The celebrity support that once flooded in evaporated. This industry thrives on momentum and trust, and they lost both. Meghan wanted Hollywood royalty after leaving actual royalty. Instead, she got sidelined. Projects stalled. Buzz died. And relevance, the thing they chased hardest, slipped through their fingers. Harry's fall was steeper. He was born into significance. He didn't have to build it. He only had to preserve it. But once credibility cracked, the title stopped carrying weight. Being a prince doesn't protect you when people stop believing you. If anything, it makes the disappointment sharper. Expectations were higher and the fall harsher. The public reaction said it all. Not outrage, not hatred. Something worse. Indifference. Articles stopped performing. Clips stopped trending. The same drama that once guaranteed attention barely registered. And in public life, indifference is the final stage. It means people have emotionally checked out. What ties everything together is the same core issue: trust. Once people suspect you're managing reality instead of living it, every move becomes suspect. Every photo feels staged. Every statement feels strategic. And once that perception sets in, it's almost impossible to undo. They had two paths. One was simple but risky: transparency. Address the questions directly. Provide clarity. Accept whatever fallout comes with honesty. The other was avoidance. Delay. Deflect. Hope time erases doubt. They chose the second path. And it's failing because the questions aren't going away. They're evolving. They're becoming sharper. And they're spreading beyond internet forums into mainstream conversation. And that's dangerous, not just for them, but for the institution tied to their names. Monarchies don't collapse from revolutions anymore. They collapse from disbelief, from people quietly deciding the story no longer adds up. When that happens, crowns become costumes, palaces become sets, and tradition turns into theater. Meghan entered this world with enormous goodwill. People wanted her to succeed, wanted her to modernize without destroying. Instead, she became the figure who made people question the most sacred assumption of all. And whether that was intentional or not doesn't matter anymore. The outcome is the same. Harry now looks like a man trapped between narratives, defending silence while preaching openness, demanding privacy while chasing attention, insisting on truth while reacting like someone afraid of it. And the tragedy is how unnecessary it all was. This didn't require theatrics. It required clarity. And maybe that's the real reason it hasn't happened. Maybe clarity is the one thing they can't afford. Because once you answer directly, you lose control. And control has always been the priority. So now they're left with shrinking relevance, eroding trust, and a story that refuses to stay buried. Not because people are cruel, but because unanswered questions never disappear. They wait. They grow. And until those questions are faced head on, this saga doesn't end. It just lingers, quietly, uncomfortably. Not with a bang, but with doubt. The bang, but with doubt. The bang, but with doubt. The